A little over a year ago, in January of 2024, the Lunduke Journal published an article and video detailing Microsoft's policies towards gender transitioning young children, including as young as 3 years old. The company had health insurance policies, mandatory ones, to gender transition and do sex changes of 3-year-olds and encouraged their employees to do so. We went through at the time all of the details on it, including publishing much of the details from their internal report on the topic. And now here we are in 2025. It is March of 2025. There's a new president in office. Many states have reaffirmed what is just simply obvious, that you cannot gender transition young children. You cannot give young children sex change operations. That's insane. But Microsoft's still doing it. In fact, if you look at Microsoft's corporate policies around this, it has remained unchanged in all of that time, including their Primera Blue Cross supplemental health insurance policy. I say supplemental, but it's mandatory. All employees have to pitch in for this, whether they want their children to be having sex change operations or not. Here's a PDF from Primera.com. Microsoft Gender Affirming Benefit Information. Primera Blue Cross administers the gender affirming benefit for eligible Microsoft members. Specifically, and we'll just scroll down here to a key part of it here. There's a spot on here. I'm just going to do a search. Child. Oh, look at this. Is gender affirming medical treatment for children covered? Yes. Yes. Surgical interventions are considered when appropriate, and the plan covers all non-surgical medical treatments such as hormone therapy and the like. So here we are in 2025, and Microsoft is still pushing sex changes on young children. I'm going to read a little bit from my report from last year, because this is the only report that's been done on this at all. There has been not one news outlet on planet Earth that is covering the fact, despite the fact that I've provided all the details to them, that Microsoft is actively promoting and encouraging their employees and paying for it, for their employees to give sex changes to their toddlers. It's insane, it's outlandish, it's crazy, and it's downright evil. I'm going to read a little bit from my reporting here, because it's the only reporting that exists. Let's see here. The Lunduke Journal has received leaks of a confidential whistleblower within Microsoft that show a concerted efforts to gender transition children as young as 3 years old, including guides for Microsoft employees of trans children, corporate support groups to encourage transitioning children, and mandatory health insurance add-ons, which cover transgender treatment and services for family members, including children. This comes from a 2019 report commissioned by Microsoft entitled Gender Identity and the Dynamic Workforce, Creating an Inclusive Workplace. This is the front image of that document. Now, why I mentioned this here, the date. This has been going on at least for the last 6 years at Microsoft. 6 years of pushing for children of employees to get gender transitioned. And it really is encouraging. Specifically, this comes from a study put together by an organization called WFD Consulting. Microsoft paid for this study to provide them actionable recommendations that they could use within their organization. While there are several concerning sections of this 96-page report, let's jump to Chapter 6, which specifically deals with providing gender-affirming care to children and encouraging Microsoft employees to pursue that avenue with their children. This section focused entirely on transitioning children, is roughly 15 pages long, and consists of a combination of quotes from employees along with recommendations, including this story of a 3-year-old girl whose parents transitioned her into a boy. I'm not going to read this to you now. It's on screen, and you can go check out the article, which I will link to wherever I am including this show, so you can read all of these details for yourself. That way you don't have to take my word for it. One thing that should be pointed out here, this particular report that has been used inside Microsoft and continues to be used inside Microsoft was temporarily made publicly available. This can be verified every which way from Sunday. You can go look this up. WFD Consulting published this. Microsoft published this during one of their events. There was a bit of a backlash around it, so they removed it publicly, but the company continues to push it internally and use it as the holy grail of how to make trans children. The report includes stories about children ranging from 3 years old up to the teen years. The fact that toddlers were included in this is absolutely horrifying. According to the Lunduke Journal source, quote, "This report was trumpeted and celebrated by many within Microsoft." As the report goes on, it gets into specific recommendations and advice for Microsoft employees on how to assist their children in transitioning their gender, including a section, "After realization or disclosure, the journey begins." A sense of urgency was also applied. Microsoft employees were warned that they must make decisions about gender-affirming care quickly, as there is a, quote, "ticking clock for puberty blockers," end quote. Once again, there's a lot of details in here that are worth reading over that you can see on screen, or you can go check out the article for all of the details. The report also included several recommendations from Microsoft management, including the establishment of groups and official corporate communication channels for parents of transgender and non-binary children. That occurred, that happened within the company. It was also recommended that groups for young transgender kids under 13 years old be created. And again, Microsoft has been trumpeting this as the gold standard of how you should approach transitioning children. One of the other recommendations which Microsoft acted upon was to remove age restrictions for gender-affirming treatments on children under 18. That's right. This report said, hey, Microsoft, you should allow your employees to gender transition their toddlers. And Microsoft said, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's pay for that. In fact, let's make it mandatory. Quote, "Microsoft implemented a company-wide mandatory supplemental health insurance plan which covered gender-affirming care for small children and other family members. This is known as the Health Plus plan." Health Plus. I'd say there's a definite plus in there. According to one source within Microsoft, this report was used to justify the addition of a new supplemental health insurance plan, which employees were not given the option to opt out of. Now, what specifically did this non-optional plan cover? Things like hormone therapy, puberty blockers, and various sex change surgeries and medications, many of which were made available to small children. Here's a big old list. I mean, we're talking cheek molar implants, chin nose implants, collagen injections, forehead lifts. Sure, okay. Feminizing medications, estradiol, progesterone preparations, anti-androgen medications, masculinizing medications, hormone therapy plan, on and on and on. So, and what do we learn from all that leaked information? And this is really important to remember all of this. The first is that Microsoft paid for reports of this, which encouraged employees to transition their children. They then took those reports and they implemented them. And they used them within the company to encourage this activity. Second, the idea of children as young as 3 years old being transitioned to another gender was presented as a good thing. Something that you needed to do, something you needed to act quickly on because it was so important that you give your 3-year-old a sex change operation. Number 3, support groups using company resources were to be created for transitioning children. Number 4, Microsoft added a non-optional health plan which specifically covers gender-affirming care for small children. And here we are. Here we are at this point in 2025, and Microsoft is still doing this, has not changed their strategy at all. They've been continuing to push this across their company with non-optional health insurance policies which push gender-affirming care on small children. I mean, this all dovetails nicely with their gender diversity and inclusion efforts, which you can read about at Microsoft.com. And they push regularly for a lot of trans issues and the like. And I want to make something very clear here. I am not saying that Microsoft employees can't be identifying as whatever they want to identify as. And I'm not saying that Microsoft needs to agree with my personal ideals around any of this. But there are two important things here to remember. The first is that what Microsoft's doing here is not legal. It is criminal, right? Microsoft does business in all 50 states in the United States. I don't believe there is any state in the country that does not have Microsoft employees working in them, either in Microsoft offices or working from home. And Microsoft provides this to all of their employees in all 50 states. Microsoft is breaking the law in many, many states, even if your interpretation of the federal laws around this say that, oh, it's totally legal to give a 3-year-old a sex change operation. Even if that's your interpretation, that's nuts. But even if that is your interpretation, the state's laws in many states, in a huge and growing number of states, make it crystal clear that it is illegal. You can't do that to little kids. So Microsoft is breaking the law. In so many states, it is obscene. The second thing to think about here is what Microsoft's doing is evil. From just a moral and ethical standpoint, this is not okay. It's not a good thing. It's an incredible, extreme evil, an unforgivable evil. There is no justification for gender transitioning a 3-year-old. There is no justification for gender transitioning any minor. They talk repeatedly about kids under the age of 13. And Microsoft supports it. And Microsoft forces every single one of their employees to subsidize it. So Microsoft, this supplementary health insurance plan, including here provided by Premera Blue Cross, who administers this gender-affirming benefit, employees pay into that. It is deducted from their paycheck, pre-tax, before they get their paycheck, and is paid for in bulk by Microsoft, and then all employees are provided with it. You can't opt out. You pay into it. So Microsoft is forcing their employees to pay for something that is objectively evil. Sorry, you can't say it's not evil. You can't. Kids, little kids, toddlers. Oh my word. So this needs to be talked about more. I'm going to link to my initial report, which I encourage anyone out there to not only spread this report, but do your own reporting based on it. If any reporter out there would like additional information, I've received information from whistleblowers with inside Microsoft. I have a full copy of this report, which you know what, I should make it available. I'll just make sure the PDF, I had it available at one point up on the website. I'll make sure it's available again somewhere. And this just needs to be public. People need to be talking about this. Why this isn't getting covered by every news outlet. Forget just the tech press. The Lunduke Journal is the only place that's covered any of this from any press. Fox News hasn't covered it. CNN hasn't covered it. No political, no tech, no news outlet anywhere has covered any of this. And it's absolutely outrageous. It's horrific. It's pure evil. And it needs to stop. It absolutely needs to stop. And so we're bringing it up again because it's still going on. Over a year after my initial reporting, and this is still going on. Of course, back then when I did the initial report, and once again now, I have reached out to Microsoft for details around this. However, Microsoft is one of the many companies that has official policies about not talking to Lunduke. Don't talk to Lunduke. That's official policy. So have they responded? No. Policy is no. More likely than not, after I publish this, I'll hear from multiple Microsoft employees like I always do. And they will just reaffirm everything that's happening. and reaffirmed their objection to it, but they can't stop it because the heads of Microsoft, the boards of directors of Microsoft, are absolutely committed and passionate about making sure that toddlers get sex change operations. I'd like to say it was something else, but that sure does seem what's happening. Thank you to the Lunduke Journal subscribers. Go to lunduke.com. You allow me to do all of this reporting that absolutely no news outlet on earth does at all. But I get to do it because I don't take any money from advertisers, right? I don't take money from big tech, Microsoft, IBM, Google, none of them. None of them can, Amazon, they can't influence me because I don't take a dime from any of them. I exist entirely thanks to subscribers like you. So go to lunduke.com. There's various options of how you can support, of how you can spread the word, of all the myriad of ways that you can get the Lunduke Journal. We're on X and Rumble and Locals and YouTube and Facebook and Patreon. And there's a podcast feed and iTunes and Spotify and subs. We're everywhere. We're everywhere and growing. So thank you to everyone who has made this possible, because we publish things that need to be seen. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, and we're shining a big old spotlight on this one here today. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, nerds and nerdettes across the inner tubes, I do declare, end broadcast.